Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. As usual, I have a fantastic guest with me today. His name is Cam Torrens. He is a writer, reader, runner, and ruminator who has served 30 years as an Air Force pilot, a U.S. diplomat to Beijing, and a professor of aerospace studies at Virginia Tech. He is passionate about fitness. He has hiked the Appalachian Trail at the age of 52 and has run 7 ultra marathons. He is also the father of 6, the president of Buena Vista Public Library Board, VP of Central Colorado Writers, and incident commander with Chaffee County Search and Rescue North. He is also the creator of the Tyler Zahn Suspense Novels. Cam, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's such an honor and it's so nice to see you. And I have to tell you, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for your service. I really appreciate that. And I always want to honor our veterans because where would we be without you? And the other thing is that just to let the listeners know that we met each other back in December up in Georgetown, Colorado at a Christmas festival, the Book Nook. And you're so quiet and humble. And I even thought, oh, he's kind of shy. And then I read your bio and I'm like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that, you did all these things and you must be the most humble person I have ever met.
Well, don't ask my wife the question, and my kids kind of think I'm full of myself too. So,
Well, they're supposed to, right?
right. So,
So tell us then, how did you end up becoming an author?
well, I started writing late in life. I mean, I wrote small poems and high school papers,
Mhm,
and had teachers tell me that they thought I had a little bit of talent. Um, but that was the end of that. And in
mhm.
my 30 years of the Air Force, I did plenty of writing, but it was all either defending why we should keep the C-130 in the service instead of retiring it, or it was writing somebody's performance report on why they should be promoted to the next rank. Not the type of writing that anybody else would find exciting. But one thing that was constant through all that is that I grew up with books. I'm a lifelong reader. I've always read somewhere between 80 and 100 books a year.
Wow.
And I said to myself after I retired, right around 2020, I said, I want to try to write something similar to what all these authors that I'm such a fanboy of have done. I see if I can do it. And I'm like, I've read them all. How hard can it be? And that was the beginning of discovering exactly how hard it could be. But that's what got me started. I started the month before COVID without realizing that all that was going to happen. But obviously, a good time to start a writing habit, as it turned out.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who were writing books during that tumultuous time, let's just put it to you that way. And it was a great way to express oneself. And of course, what else was there to do? Because you couldn't
Right.
really go anywhere, right?
Correct.
So then I love the titles of your books. Okay, so I know you've got 2 out now and you're working on some more. So this is actually a series. So it is definitely a suspense series. And even I'm just going to share with the listeners, the title of the first book is Stable. Is it Stable? No, Stolen. Stable.
Stable.
Okay.
Stable.
I can't even read my own handwriting. I have got to stop writing with my feet. It's a habit. Stable, and the subtitle is Someone is Taking Them. The second book is False Summit. The Truth is Hard to Face. And you've got 2 more coming up, and I'm just not going to share the title with that of those with the audience, but you can tell them later if you want to, but I'd like to keep them in suspense. So tell us what the process was like writing that first book. Here you are locked up 2020 with nothing else to
Well,
do.
I knew that I wanted to write a suspense thriller. Um, I'm a big fan of C.J. Box, who writes for Wyoming suspense adventure, and also Craig Johnson, who writes the Longmire series. A lot of folks don't know that those are actually books first. Then came the TV series, and the problem was I'm not a game warden, I'm not a sheriff, and they say write what you know. And I
Mhm.
had been doing search and rescue. This is my fifth year on the local search and rescue team, and I've been on a ton of missions. I don't have special areas of expertise, but one thing I'm really good at is hauling stuff on my back. I think the Appalachian Trail gave me lots of practice with that. So I carry all the ropes and the gear all the time. And I'd seen a lot of missions, and I've had plenty of missions where I was like, oh, I wonder what would happen if this mission would have turned out just a little differently. And that was the inspiration for the first book, Stable. We went out looking for, in the real world, it was a 7-year-old girl who had wandered away. She was
Wow.
visiting her aunt and uncle's house right at the base of Mount Columbia out here in the Collegiate Peaks.
Wow.
And we did a mission, and in the end, we found her. We were expecting to find her down in the valley because lost children tend to go downhill, but we found her over 1,000 feet up the side of the mountain range, and she was looking for home, but she was still moving uphill. And I remember coming back from that, going, "Well, I wonder what would have happened if that would have turned out differently? Not that something bad would have happened to her necessarily, but what happened if you would have found a different girl, another girl who was missing? You didn't know she was missing until you found her, and
Wow.
that's the premise of Stable. There's something going on in our area that people wouldn't have expected, and Tyler Zahn is trying to figure out what that is. He's good friends with the deputy sheriff, and he's not a law enforcement officer
Mhm.
yet, but he's trying
Mhm.
to figure things out, and he gets involved with that.
So maybe that there is some nefarious activity going on in this very small, close-knit town. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying,
Mhm.
and it does touch into missing children, which also can be associated with child trafficking. But
Mhm.
I've never been a writer who wanted to get into the details of what's happening to the young kids, in fiction like this, and so it kind of talks about it at a higher level. It treats it with kid gloves. So
Mhm.
uh, I haven't put any trigger warnings on the books
Mhm.
because I don't think I need them. I
Mhm.
feel like I address the topic in a good way,
Mhm.
as good as it can be.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about just one thing I want you to elaborate a little bit more for the listeners who might not live in Colorado. You talked about the collegiate peaks, and that is probably one of my most favorite places to go in Colorado. We don't go there often enough, I'll be perfectly honest with that. But just tell the audience what the collegiate peaks are.
It's an incredible part of the Sawatch Range.
Mhm.
Within Buena Vista, we can drive within an hour. We can get to the trailheads of 14 different 14,000-foot peaks, which we call, being a Coloradan yourself, we call them 14ers. And so I've climbed them all multiple times. It's my house is literally 1.5 miles from the section of the Colorado Trail that goes on the east side of the Collegiate Peaks.
Mhm.
And so we're up there all the time. And I joke, even though I've climbed the mountains, I spend most of my time going partway up because it's search and rescue missions. And our number one missions are people that go hike a 14er, and they either split up with their hiking partner or they try to take a shortcut. And
Oh,
so,
God. So just I have done 3 14ers, and that was
nice.
certainly enough. No, no, it wasn't that nice. It was not a pretty sight. Only summited once. And that was the ones that were close to Denver. I can't even near Bakersville or whatever. They're like the beginners. I can't remember what the name of them, what they are now. But we did do one of the collegiate peaks. I can't remember which one it was.
Mhm.
And we were so stupid. It was just, me and my husband. It was a beautiful day and our dog. And so we had this lovely, black lab mix, and Jesse just loved hiking and climbing and walking and running and playing everything. But about halfway up the mountain, we realized, uh-oh, we need to turn around maybe and take her back because you could tell her paws were getting very, very sensitive. And all of a sudden, as we're making this decision, a storm came up. And we saw the lightning, and the thunderclap that followed it actually thrust me against the rock.
Wow.
And, you know, we looked at each other and just started running. The three of us just ran down to the trailhead. It was just pretty impressive. But yeah, it's a real experience trying to climb a 14er. Like I said, summited once. That was good enough for me. I'm done.
We've had a couple dog rescues as well.
Oh,
So
really?
sometimes the dogs just give up, and it's not that you got to turn around and get back down. They just won't go anymore. And so we've had a few of those.
Oh
So
my goodness. Okay, so that's your first book is Stable, and then False Summit. I love the title of that.
thanks. Yeah, that one, my two youngest boys, they're ninth graders now, but at the time that this book was coming into fruition, I think they were seventh grade, somewhere in the middle of middle
Mhm,
school. And I was looking for ideas, and they said, "Well, you wrote about a missing person that's search and rescue went out to look for, but what would happen if one of your search and rescue people got lost or went missing?" And I was like, huh, that doesn't happen very often. And so I took that idea and ran with it. And it's really, it's a suspense thriller like the first one in the
mhm,
in the fact that there's a lot of action and things happening, but it's also more of a psychological thriller. So it's written in the first person, and Zahn is trying to figure out what happened to his teammate, who is a close friend.
mhm,
But then it flops between chapters. It's a time shift. It takes you back. Every other chapter is actually the female search and rescue member and stuff that was going on in her life that Zahn didn't know about, and it
mhm,
it kind of comes together there at the end.
mhm. Okay, so let me ask you this then, because they both sound fascinating. But what was it like when you held your first print copy of your book in your hand?
Oh, I was so excited! It came in a big box. I got the same time I got the boxes. I had an envelope. I had seen what a single author copy looked like online and approved it. And so when I cut open that box, I had one of my sons filming it on the phone, and it was pretty special.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's
it was
almost
neat.
surreal, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, I see your books behind you there, so you've been through the experience. It's a pretty special feeling. It hasn't gotten old. I actually get resupplies of books and still get excited when I open them up.
I know. I never get tired of just opening them up and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm the one that did this." And I'm working on, well, two more right now. And the one that I'm working on more seriously right now is actually a follow-up to the Ninja book. But and I thought this is going to be a piece of cake because I know exactly what I want to do, exactly what I want to say, and it has not been the piece of cake I was planning. It's actually been a nightmare, I just can't give it up. I actually had lunch with my editor this past week down in Castle Rock, and I was telling her about it. I says, "But I just can't give it up. There's something inside of me that says it's gonna come together,
Right.
and it's an important, message to share. So we shall see what happens."
Right. It can't come together if you give it up. So, yeah,
Right.
I'm always a big fan. When I'm writing a book, I write 1,000 words a day, no matter what. And for 100 days. So I try to get 100,000 words done. And when I'm done, I'm all nervous inside because I know that the 75,000 of those words were crap, and I'm going to have to go back and fix them and do the storyline and stuff. But it's so much easier to have something that you're not ready to put out to the public,
Mhm.
I think, than it is to do it from scratch. So don't give up
Mhm.
on it.
Okay, well, thank you. That is excellent advice, and I'm really sorry that the listeners couldn't have seen my face when you were explaining that to me because I was like, I can't write 1,000 words a day. But yeah, it's so that is great advice. I'm going to try that. When you first said it, I thought there's no way on God's green earth I could do that. But then when you said, yeah, then you got 100,000 words and 75,000 of them are just crap and they're going to get thrown out. So yes, I can do that. So hey, thank you for that tip.
No problem.
Okay, so now let's talk about how in the world you find time to do everything that you're doing. I mean, just writing is time consuming enough. But now you've got 6 kids. You have a lot of extracurricular activities. You're running ultra marathons. How do you find the time to get all of this done?
I'm a big schedule person, so and I'm pretty disciplined with that. So I have a routine that I do in the morning, and none of it would work if I didn't hadn't married the right person. So obviously, with 6 kids, I, you know, I'm certainly not the one running the show in that department. It's a team effort, and sometimes I'm on the lower end of the percentage of the help.
Mhm.
But my wife, she's actually a 20-year Air Force veteran, and she flies for a small airline out of Denver, SkyWest,
Oh,
and
wow.
so she's busy. She's busy too, so I still get plenty of time driving kids to the bus stop and things like that. But I have a planner book, and I'm very meticulous on how I do it. We only have 2 of the 6 kids left in the house, the 2 ninth graders.
Mhm.
Uh, I, I raised my hand like this a little bit because we've got one in and out of the spare bedroom as he just graduated from Western Colorado in December, so still looking for full-time employment.
Mhm.
But so there's more time when there's fewer kids around, and I just stick to the schedule. You'll appreciate the fact that fitness is usually one of the first things. So I'm a morning runner. That's when I do my runs, and then the writing happens after I'm all done with that stuff. So the
Mhm.
fitness
Do
stuff
you
comes first.
do you run every day?
I do. I started doing a running streak because I was having issues where sometimes I would have a slight little injury or this or that, and I would have these pauses. And I was reading about people who did run streaks, and so I was like, well, if I just get into that habit of doing that, maybe it'll fix it. And so this morning was day 869 of running at least a mile. And and so I've been through it with when my back has been pulled and I've been almost in tears, and I've been through it with food poisoning that I won't describe to you. But those are always 1 mile days. Usually I run a little more than that. And the other thing I'll throw at you was when you called me a ultra marathoner. I like to call myself an amateur ultra marathoner because
Mhm.
one, 50 kilometers is the lowest end of a ultra marathon, and I usually run a 50 or 55K, and I usually only do one a year. I can't bring myself to put the time in to train year round or for longer distances. So I'm a part timer.
Well, plus you live in a place that I'm sure you have a lot of snow. It's not really conducive to running every day in the middle of a blizzard or if you've got 2 or
Right.
3 feet of snow.
I do a lot of podcasts and audiobooks on the treadmill. Uh, hit the snow when I can. So my wife and I went snowshoeing this morning before the
Mhm.
podcast,
Mhm.
and try to do what I can. But a lot of time on the treadmill.
Mhm. Okay, so now I'm guessing that were you always this disciplined, or was this something that you learned from being in the Air Force?
So I've always been a list person, so a to-do list.
Mhm.
So in the Air Force, 30 years, if you're in for 30 years, you end up leading something. And so I did
Mhm.
a lot of flying the first 10 to 15 years. I flew the first 21 years, but starting around the 12, 13-year point, I started being, second in command, commander of squadrons, commander of groups, commander of wings, and I had to be able to stay organized. And so I had kind of a reputation for my chicken scratch writing on these to-do lists that I always carried around with me, and that was what kept me on schedule. And I still do it to this day. I have a day planner that if anybody gets a chance to see it, they're like, I can't believe that you call this retirement, but I love it. That's how I operate.
Well, and it keeps you obviously young, happy, vibrant, healthy, and that's really what's important.
So I think so. I agree.
Yeah, well, I'm still now. Do you ski?
Downhill ski,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So I haven't done any cross country skiing, and a lot of my fellow search and rescue members backcountry ski. And in fact, on some missions, some of us will be on snowshoes and some of us will be on backcountry skis. I haven't tried it. Been up there with them because we have to do avalanche training and avalanche response, but mostly it's just downhill skiing. We're halfway between Monarch and Ski Cooper, so we usually go to
Oh,
one of
okay.
those two places.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question was avalanche, the avalanche danger.
So right, there's a lot of avalanche danger out in this area. Fortunately, we don't get that many avalanche calls, but because of the probability, we're constantly avalanche training. And as a matter of fact, we have a 4-hour search and rescue avalanche training next Sunday that
Mhm.
everyone is going. We're prepping for a big inspection in May. It's our Mountain Rescue Association certification once every 5 years.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
we're really doing a lot of training in different disciplines: search, high angle, which is going up and down on the ropes,
Mhm.
and avalanche. And every one of those missions needs somebody to carry something. So I'm right there.
So basically what you're telling us is that you're never going to be out of a job.
Right. Which is kind of funny because that's what I did in the Air Force, was hauled stuff too. I flew
Mhm.
transport and air refueling planes, so I was either hauling beans and bullets or carrying gas.
Oh, that's
So
so funny. I think you did tell me that when I first met you. So just for the listeners, just so you know, Cam is a very large man. He is very tall, and I can see how he would be able to carry a lot of stuff.
uh, I don't
So
know if
now,
I consider myself that large.
well, you're tall. Well, you're a lot bigger than
Uh,
I am. So, but now, are you from Buena Vista originally? Were you born and raised here?
No, I grew up in Washington State, mostly on the west side. I came from a family of educators, not really a huge military background in my family. They were all teachers, and I was looking for an opportunity for somebody else to pay for my college in high school, and I
Hmm.
ended up at the Air Force Academy. And then my youngest sister, she lives up in Washington now. She followed me about 3 years later and went to the Air Force Academy as well. So she did a 26-year career in the Air Force, but she got to do like everything exactly how she wanted. She was a public affairs officer, and then was an English professor at the Air Force Academy for 3 different tours.
Wow.
And she's a professional editor and writer now. So she's real
Wow.
proud of her.
So it must run in the blood.
So I think I got it from her. She's been writing, so she was writing all through the Air Force and stuff, and I was
Hmm.
reading her work. So she's a big inspiration for me.
Hmm. And it's really funny. I talked to another gentleman this morning who is down in like the Black Forest area, who had 30 years invested in the Air Force as well. He was a pilot. So you're
Oh,
my
great.
second Air Force veteran today.
I'll have to talk to you after the podcast. It's a small Air Force. Once you get in it, I might know him or
Oh, I'm sure
or
you
her.
do know him. So anyhow, yeah, we will talk about that a little bit later. So tell us what you're working on now. I mean, you don't have to give us the titles of the books or but what are you working on? What are you doing?
So writing it's been kind of a confluence. I told you that 100 days, 1,000 words a day. I actually had to take a 1 week pause on that. Because I was working on my fifth Tyler Zahn novel, and about the 18,000 word point, I got my third book, which is coming out in August. It's called Scorched. I got it back from the publishers and given in electronic book format. They gave me 14 days for final edits. And so I put that on the front burner, but I also had a suspense to get the fourth book, which is actually a prequel to the series, into the editor by the 1st of March.
Mhm.
So those 3 things I kind of had to start prioritizing. I couldn't do all 3. So concentrated on those, and I'm back to the writing number 5 right now. But I'll
Okay,
give you
so
just
wait a
a
minute.
so a
Did you
teaser.
get the
Go ahead.
March 1st of this year, like 3 days ago? That was your deadline?
Correct.
Oh my goodness.
That was the deadline to get the number 4 into the editor. And so the third one comes out in August, and it's called
Mhm.
Scorched,
Mhm.
and it's a Tyler Zahn book. And I will just say that it has to do with an art theft on Cottonwood Pass. So the book kind of runs from there, and it's a scorched. You can tell from the title, it's a dry season out here in the collegiates, and we're having a lot of fire danger. And the book kind of runs in that direction. And then the prequel is called Death Spiral, and in that one, this is actually Tyler Zahn before Stable. So he's just come out of the Air Force, and he's not emotionally doing so well. He's not mentally doing so well, and he's certainly not physically doing so well. And he's scared to take on a bunch of responsibility. He's retired out here in the Buena Vista area. And this deputy sheriff kind of talks him into getting involved in stuff. And through a series of unfortunate events, he finds himself involved with some bad guys that are messing with the water system to Denver. So, the Dillon Reservoir, they've got a tunnel underneath that thing where they meter water through the Roberts Tunnel. It comes out around Grant and feeds on into Denver. That plays an important part in the book, as does the dam above Silverthorne on the Dillon Reservoir. So it's a fun book.
Oh yeah, it sounds really delightful, especially now when I go upstairs later on today and I'm making dinner or whatever, and I turn on the tap water, I'm going to be looking very close at what's coming out of the faucet.
Right, right. So, but I'm
Gee.
excited about it. The dam book, Death Spiral, will come out in February of 2025. And then the one I'm working on now, the fifth one, obviously the publisher's got to accept it before I can say it's going to come out as the fifth book. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh wow, it sounds very, very exciting.
I'm excited. The one I'm working on now has to do with the Colorado Trail. And I've hiked about half the Colorado Trail since the Appalachian Trail. I'm a big fan of these long trails.
Obviously. So what was it like doing the Appalachian Trail?
Oh,
And what made you do that? What made you decide to do the Appalachian Trail?
it was incredible. My friends in the Air Force are like, "Oh, you're going out there because you want to become one with nature and find your inner self." But really, I just wanted to see if I could do it. They said that, I don't know what the stats are, 90% or 80% don't make it, and I've always liked long distances, and I thought I could give it a shot. And when my wife said she would take care of business, like she wasn't already, but she would take care of
Right.
business for that 4-month period. That was the green light that I needed. And so, yeah, it was pretty special. And I met a lot of great friends. Both of the young guys that I hiked the longest with, they were in their mid-20s at that time, had been out to Buena Vista and hiked these mountains out here with me. So I hiked 100 miles with one of those guys the year before last on the Colorado Trail. And then the other guy I hiked with, I took him up Mount Yale. He's a Yale graduate, so he had to go up Mount Yale. Took him up this past summer. So it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I would never hang out with guys in their 20s, probably, except for search and rescue, if it
Right.
hadn't been the Appalachian Trail. So it was a neat opportunity to connect with friends.
Wow. Okay. So I just have to make a comment that your wife is a saint.
She is.
I mean, 4 months is a really long time with 6 kids and all the responsibilities. So kudos to her.
Right. I mean, I started hiking 2 months before I was officially retired from the Air Force. They call it terminal leave if you have it saved up. And and then I came back off the trail for a week because one of my sons was graduated from high school in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I was going to have my retirement ceremony. And then I shaved and put my uniform back on. And then after that, I went out and got back on the trail. Well, she sold the house, bought a motorhome, and then picked me up in the motorhome at the end of the trail, and we went off and with 4 of the kids. We lived in the motorhome for a year. And so, yeah, she's pretty special.
Yes, she is. Wow. Okay. So, let me see, where was I going with this too? I'm still stuck on that 4 months taking care of the kids by herself and then selling the house and buying a motorhome. That's just amazing. Okay, so where was I going with this? Yes, with the search and rescue. What made you decide to even get on the search and rescue? I mean, was this something that, okay, I just retired, now I'm looking for something to do that has meaning, part of living in Buena Vista and being part of the small community? What was the motivating, what was with the trigger that made you decide you were going to do that?
Well, it was two things. I met a gentleman who was over the age of 80 who's on our search and rescue team. We were trying out churches in the valley, and I met him. He was a former airline pilot, and he mostly at this stage he does snowmobile rescues. He's a motorcycle rider and a snowmobiler. And I was pretty inspired by that. and I was looking for a way to serve. When I first got here, I got to be careful how I say this, but I got roped into serving on my homeowners association board.
Mm.
And now I can list off 100 things that I would rather do than serve on a homeowners association board. Um, just because, it's that thing about finding out how the sausage is made. It's more information than I ever needed.
Hmm.
And so, I did that for the first 2 years and, was looking for other opportunities. So one where you volunteer and you get to go outside and hike, and
Hmm.
sometimes in the middle of the night, that just sounded like a blast. So that was what got me in search and rescue.
Oh yeah, that sounds really fun.
There's nothing like, so you think you've experienced the joy of a 14er. There's nothing like being halfway up one with a full moon, lighting up everything, and you don't even need your flashlight. It's amazing.
Okay, very good point. And
Uh,
I mean, I've seen it when I've been skiing, in the middle of the
right.
night, you wake up and you're absolutely right. But of course, I would always be inside in a warm bed or bedroom or whatever, so I could, watch it from or look at it and admire it from afar. But you're absolutely right. And there's nothing like the peace and serenity of being outside in the mountains, especially at night or in the evening. It's so quiet.
Right. So
And
special.
that piece, I know. I mean, even I learned how to ski when I was 9 years old, back in Pennsylvania, so it's definitely not like skiing out here, that's for sure. But I would go with my dad a lot. We would do a lot of night skiing, which if you've never been to Pennsylvania in the winter at night, it's really, really cold. And our snow was more like my one sister calls it bulletproof ice. So that's basically what it was. So again, nothing like the snow here in Colorado. But I would love going just because, it's a small ski area. It was virtually, empty. There weren't that many people there. My dad was on the ski patrol, so, we were able to ski for free. And I would love it every time we could go at night or do the night skiing because no one was around. I was by myself. I didn't have to deal with sisters or friends or anybody else. It was just so peaceful.
Wow. I'm jealous. That's a great opportunity skiing like that.
Oh, it was wonderful. And again, there were very few people around. And the ones that were there, obviously, they knew me and knew my dad. They were just people who the regulars. So, you were always safe. You knew that. But I would just go off by myself. And, I was 9, 10, 11 years old. I miss
That's
those
great.
days.
Right.
So now you also do write an awful lot on your website or on your blog.
I do. I've been working. First off, I wanted to get an author platform,
Hmm.
website to help promote the books. And so I was working on that while I was working on the books because I didn't want to be scrambling around after the book's published trying to put that together. And I had heard of authors having blogs, and in order to have a blog, you actually have to write something. So I got into doing that as well.
Hmm.
But after that, I'd heard about. I went to a writers' conference in Denver, the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Conference. It's held
Hmm.
every September, and I met a keynote speaker, a gentleman who writes historical fiction named David L. Robbins. He's a best-selling author and has been writing bestsellers for I think almost 30 years. He runs a free writing course for veterans every year out of
Nice.
Richmond, Virginia. And it was originally for Virginia residents, but he's opened it up to veterans and their spouses. And I just wanted an opportunity to learn from him on how to tell a story. So a lot of my blogs and the writing I'm doing now for that is some stories about when I was in the Air Force and some of the stuff that happened.
Which could give you plenty of a nice little outline for another book of like a memoir, I'm guessing.
It could. I always swore that memoir was not up my alley, but so I'm trying to decide if maybe I could turn it into like a humor book or something. Most of the stories are crazy enough to be somewhat funny. So
Well, you can always make it funny. I mean, even, you read my book, my memoir, and there were a lot of really horrible things in there, but they were funny. I mean,
Right.
you just don't imagine something like that happening. And people love stories. People love to hear stories about, especially overcoming things. And I think it would be a great read. I would buy it. I would read it. So if you needed any
Uh,
encouragement there.
well, if I put it together, I'll give it to you for an early read. Get some advice.
Okay, there you go. All right. And now that we're talking about the gentleman who had the writing workshop or whatever for veterans and their spouses, since you mentioned spouses, does your wife have any interest in writing?
She's a fantastic writer,
Ah,
and she's started a few books in the past. And she's an excellent academic writer as well. But she's still into flying. I don't fly as much anymore. And I don't think she'd be willing to take away that time for writing. So we'll see. Never say
hmm.
never. When
You never
in the
say never.
in the writing business, it's kind of like the fitness business. People think, oh, you get to be a certain age and you can't do it anymore. But really, you can get to a certain age and just be starting.
That's absolutely true. And if you are doing it and then you stop, it's harder to start up again. So basically,
Right.
just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. So, Cam, where can people find you? How can they get a hold of you? Of course, all of your information, all of your links are in the show notes, but I really like for the guests to be able to articulate it because it makes it a lot more personal.
Well, first off, in case there's any veterans watching this podcast, the program I was talking about that David L. Robbins puts on is called the Mighty Pen. And so if you look that up on Google, you'll find how you can apply for one of these free veterans courses. And it's also on YouTube. He's got professional actors uh, putting these stories out on podcasts. So that's another opportunity to see what they're doing there. But myself, I've got my author webpage is www.camtorrens.com. So all one word, Cam Torrens. I'm on Facebook. I have Cam Torrens Writer
Mhm.
is my Facebook account. Cam Torrens Writer on Instagram. I have a LinkedIn account, Cam Torrens, and I think that's mostly it. I have a Twitter account, but or X. I haven't been using it for a ton of things, but I think that's pretty much where I'm at on social media. Not a TikTok person yet, so
No,
not
I don't
sure I
do
will
TikTok.
be.
No, no, I'm done with that.
Um,
And actually, I really like Twitter, which surprised me because I've, heard so many horrible things about it. I've been on it for a long time and I have met, this is shocking. I have met some really wonderful people on Twitter.
really?
And I guess it's just because I try and stay out of like the political discussions and, I stay out of the sewer and I've met some
Right.
really lovely people. So yeah, I actually like the site. So thank you for mentioning the Mighty Pen, because what I'm going to do, and just so the listeners know, if you know of anybody who is a veteran that would be interested in that course, the link to the Mighty Pen is in the show notes. So I'll look up the
Right.
link and put it in there.
Thanks, Cheryl. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So is there anything else, Cam, that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, I know that it's not supposed to be a podcast that blows your horn, but I just want to say how much I enjoyed meeting you at Georgetown. And
Oh,
when you bought the Reluctant Ninja, I just really enjoyed your story. It's really stuck with me. We were talking before the podcast, and we were talking about you putting that together, and I read it, 3 months ago, and I can still, remember some of the details. So I just appreciate you taking the time to get to know me and giving me the opportunity to be on your show. Thank you.
well, you are welcome. It's a pleasure having you, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for the little kudos for the book. Yeah, there's times sometimes when I pick it up and look through it and go, "My God, did that really happen to me? Did I really do that?" So, but I guess I have the swords behind me, so yeah, I guess I did. So.
Right. I figured the swords are to keep your guests in line.
Nah, I'm okay with the guess. This is if anybody comes, down and has any funny stuff planned, it's like I always have some tools. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And there's actually a story behind one of those that one sword, or not the sword, the staff, bow staff there. I'll tell you later. It was really quite funny.
Okay.
So, well, thank you, Cam. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. Please do share this episode with everybody you know. Check out Cam's books. They sound amazing, and I know they are amazing. I have flipped through some of them. Um, and just remember, we can do whatever we want to at any stage of life. If you want to pick up a pen and start writing, I highly recommend it. If you want to get some hiking boots on and hike a mountain, don't start with a 14er. You don't want to have Cam having to come and rescue you, but just get out and do it, because there's so many wonderful things in life that we still have to experience, and keeps us young, healthy, and vibrant for the rest of our lives. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.